Hey guys, welcome back. This is session 2 of our Real Conversations with Real Writers. These are folks who are writing their books. Some of our folks are writing nonfiction books, that are meant to build a business, to get speaking gigs, to bring in more clients, to make way for people to work deeper with you in consulting or coaching or retreats or workshops or online memberships or courses. So we've got our nonfiction writers we're talking with today. We also have fiction writers. So folks who are writing novels, right? Maybe for the first time, maybe you've been writing, maybe some of our writers have been writing for many, many years, but they are just now on the brink of being able to release their first novel. And we want to share the whole process with you. We want you to see people at each different part of the journey, different types of books, different topics, different lifestyles. And the reason we want to share this with you is to let you know that this is possible. This is doable for you, even if you have never written a book before, even if you're thinking, gosh, that seems like a really far-fetched idea, but I kind of want to do it. I know I want to do it. I really am planning to do it in the future. We are all saying it is possible for you to begin taking the steps now. And I want to let you know that this weekend only, we are open to new writers in our signature writing courses. So just want to give you the details on that. We have special pricing and free bonuses for this weekend only. Enrollment is only open for this weekend. So if you're writing nonfiction, your details are going to be at paperravenbooks.com/ready-to-write. If you are writing fiction, your details are going to be at paperravenbooks.com/novel blueprint. We have signature courses that are designed for each type of writing. And we have bonuses that support you in actually, sitting down in your chair, getting the writing done together, publishing our company's publishing process that we are handing to you on a silver platter, and marketing all the new online marketing techniques to find your readers, to get in front of your readers, to leverage your existing contacts and connections, and to find new places where you're going to be able to market your book. So that's available for you right now. Check out those details. And I have a whole new slew of writers that we're going to be talking with. First, we're going to be talking with Jennifer Crosswhite, who I see is loaded and ready for us. But I want to do a brief intro of Jennifer before I bring her on, because Jennifer is massively both inspiring and really has been important to my journey as well. So Jennifer has this amazing breadth of experience, both in the nonfiction world, where she was managing editor at traditional publishing houses for most of her career, and also the fiction world, where she has actually self-published her own novels to massive success and has been a fiction coach for years. So she works very closely with us in our fiction side of the business and is indeed the founder, the creator of this novel blueprint method that our fiction writers are using. And so Jennifer has this great perspective on what it means to be an author and sort of all the senses of the world and how you build a true business from that. So Jennifer, if you are ready, I'm going to bring you on, adding you to the stream. Thank you, Jennifer, for coming on with me today.
You're welcome. We are in my new office, so I hope it's not too echoey, because there's literally nothing in here but me and my computer and a folding table. So
you're so nice to come on today. I know that you literally just moved houses, so your life is in boxes for the most part still. So thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Well, hey, in this business, right? We can be live anywhere. So we'll
that is true. That is why online business is awesome.
Yeah. I like the light better in this room already. So that's already a plus right now.
I like the color too. It's good.
I painted it. The wall was bright red when I moved in. I thought there's no way I can work in that. So I painted it. I put in new flooring. So it's literally ready. Bookcases go in this weekend. So I cannot wait. Next time I'm live, it'll look gorgeous. So
that's so exciting. So there's so many things that you and I can talk about. When we get on live together, I mean, we could just go. But what I really want is I want to focus in on the novel blueprint method.
Okay.
And your journey as a fiction author and what you have learned as a fiction author, both in your own writing journey and working with other authors. And you have created this method. Like, at what point in your career did you decide, gosh, in order to write novels, I really need like a method. I need a method to this madness. Do you remember like back in the day when that was?
Yeah. So the first book always takes the longest, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have a deadline. You've got all of this time. And I was still in the traditional world then. So I was lucky to have other editors give me good feedback on it. And I mean, I spent probably 4 or 5 years crafting this novel and getting it, perfect. And then once I went out and released it and had worked on the other books and stuff, and I thought, okay, now I'm at the point where I'm actually generating new books where I've not had all of this input. What do I do? Like, how do I do this so I'm not taking 2 or 3 years to write a book and having to rewrite and do all these kinds of things? And I literally took a roll of butcher paper and put it out on the dining room table and all the leaves in, like the thing was like 7 feet long. And I still have it actually somewhere in a box. I have it. And then I got all my craft books and I put them out and I thought, okay, we're going to make something that I can use over and over and over again, because I want to make sure I'm hitting all the things I need to for character development. I'm hitting all the things I need to for plot development. I don't want this big saggy middle in the middle. I want to make sure I'm doing all these things. And my frustration with a lot of craft books was that they would say things like, your characters need to be heroic. And I'm like, that's great, but how do I put that on the page? Like, does that go on page 56, 123? Like, where do I put that? So I really wanted something super specific. So I developed this whole thing and I loved it. And I was messing around with it and I started sharing it with my other author friends. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, can I have this? And I'm like, sure, you can have it. And so I was just kind of giving it to people. And then they're like, well, do you teach a class on how to use this? Well, yeah, sure, why not? Let's teach a class on how to use this. And it just literally sort of snowballed from there. And then literally people were like, well, do you have a book on it? Well, guess what? I now have a book on it. So helping people, I mean, it really started with what did I need and what was useful for me. And because of that, and because other authors were just like, wow, this is so helpful to us, I thought, well, let's just share this with everybody, because I know the frustration I had, and I knew that if I was having that frustration, a lot of other people were having that frustration too. And so since then, I've been able to use it to write, I think I'm on book number 11 now. I'm supposed to be writing book 12 right now, but the move sort of got in the way. So that'll be delayed probably till the new year. But other authors that constantly are telling me they're using this, they're enjoying it. It's really revolutionized how quickly they can write. And in this world where there is more of a rapid release, an idea that you don't want to lose your audience because they have so many other things coming at them. You want to be able to give them, you don't want to wait 2 years to put out a book. And so being able to do something that is a quality book in a shorter period of time is going to just be something super helpful for all of us who are trying to, get this writing thing going.
Yeah. I love the story, it's a short story, but of like when you gave this method to one of your authors who was already a bestseller.
Yes.
Like, she'd already been writing books.
Right.
What did she say? Like, what did she feel like was different?
Yeah, well, for them, I mean, they were feeling all the same things I was. Well, you kind of, wander your way through the plot and you figure these things out, and you have some things that you should do, but the middle is always really hard. What do you put in the middle? And then you get to the end and then you're like, okay, I think I have it. Let me send it to my crit partners. And then they tear it apart. And then you got to put it back together again. And it was just such a long process and so stressful, because especially my author friends who are in the traditional world who have these deadlines that, they're not flexible. You don't get to go, oh, it didn't really work for me. Can I have another month? No, that doesn't happen. They were like, oh my gosh, you are going to save me so much stress, because now I know what to do next. I don't have to be thinking about it. And that's a big part of writer's block a lot of times, is not knowing what comes next, not knowing what I should be working on. There's so many choices. Like, you have so many options in the creative world that actually is stifling. And so when okay, I've got a couple of options here, which are the best? I can be really creative with like 2 or 3 things. It just helped them write so much more quickly. And so that has been just a really huge thing, to see that it was helpful for other people, as well. People that already were really great writers, but giving them that sort of pathway to make sure that they were able to produce more quickly.
Yeah. So can you talk to us just at a very high level, kind of like the pathway? Like, what are we kind of sketching out? Are we, we're not pantsing, right? We're not making it up as we go. We do have like a plan. Is it like bookends? Here's the beginning, here's the end. Is it more in depth than that? What are we planning out?
I love the blueprint as a kind of an analogy. The reason being, if you're going to build a house, which is pretty complex, I mean, you got rooms, you got foundations, you got windows, doors, but then you also have like the granular stuff, like the wall color and the decoration and the fixtures and the fun stuff, right? You have all of that, but there's no way you can start building a house by decorating the room. Like, you have to lay the foundation and you have to put the walls up. Like, that is important. And so I thought, well, let's think about that in relationship to building a book, because it's the very same thing. You've got big picture stuff and you have nitty gritty stuff. And a lot of people like to start with the nitty gritty, but then you write yourself into these corners and things like that. It's like building a whole living room perfectly decorated and then forgetting to put in a door. And so then now you've got to like demolish this beautifully decorated room to put in a door so it actually functions. And so the idea is, let's put all the pieces that we need to construct a good novel together. So we start with getting to know our characters really well. We get to know the backstory. We get to know their wounds. All of that kind of thing will start informing your plot. A certain kind of character is going to react a certain way. So we kind of toggle back and forth between plot and character, and we're laying all of the major stones so that by the time you have finished your novel blueprint, you're ready to go. You have everything you need to write your novel. I was telling one of the groups that when I was teaching about this, I said, when I did this for my last novel, before I started writing, I think I had about 120 scenes already sketched out.
Wow.
I already knew what I was going to write. And sometimes it was as simple as, okay, I know here they're going to like almost kiss. I know that I have to have that scene. And so that would just be like this placeholder. And I personally like Scrivener because you can just put these little marks, for where all these scenes are. But if you have 120 scenes ready to go before you start to write your book, you're not going to have writer's block, because you might not have the next scene from what you're writing, but you might know that, okay, well, in 2 or 3 scenes, I got to get here. So I can create these stepping stones right there. And I think that's what makes it really powerful for people.
I think it's brilliant even to have like a ballpark of like, is it 5 scenes in a novel? Is it 500 scenes? It's like, okay, if we can start to just line them out, we're going to see that there are like, 100 or maybe up to 200 scenes. It's like just even thinking about that, I feel like provides a lot of clarity on the timeline and really the scope of the novel. We see that a lot on the nonfiction side. Just even be able to say, look, you're aiming for like 50,000 words. Let's break this down. Yes. Like the having that is actually really helpful, and not feeling like you're wandering around lost with no direction. Yeah. So how has this impacted your own ability to write books? I mean, you said the first book took like 3 or 4 years. You were in traditional publishing world still, so you had tons of critique people and like resources around you. But like now, you've gone off into indie world, like pretty hardcore. So
I'm totally sold on the whole indie process, because I think your ability to have control over your own work is huge. And you don't have that in traditional. You give your rights away. I mean, yes, they pay you a royalty, but the royalties are so small. I make so much more money than my traditionally published friends. I mean, it's just when we start talking about, actual money, I'm just like, okay, you made that last year. I made that last month, and I'm not one of like the superstar people. I'm just a very average indie person. I don't think I've even hit my stride yet of where I'm going to end up being. But I think that because you have control, you can run a sale. You don't have to run a sale. You can a newsletter swap. There's so many different options that you can choose to do that works with your life and what you're trying to accomplish with yourself. And that individual thing is extremely powerful. So for me, being able to take the blueprint means I can figure out how long my book is going to be and when I'm going to be done and when I want the next book in the series to come out. I can look at a whole year and have a really good sense of where things need to happen, where I might want to do promotions. You run it in a much more professional way. It's the same way that a traditional publishing company runs, except they're telling the author, you need to have this date, this date, this date, this date, too bad if that doesn't work for you. I get to design that for myself and decide what is going to work for me and what isn't. And it, like I said earlier, it allows me to write so much more quickly than I would have in the past. When I am buckled down and not being distracted by my company and all of that right? And moving, and all that kind of stuff. I can write my books are longer. They're in the 90 some thousand word category. In 7 weeks I can be done, and it's ready to go to the proofreader. It's a finished product. And that's not writing all day. That's writing 2 hours a day. And 2 hours a day.
2 hours a day.
Yeah. And so, I'm not even super fast. I put about 2,000, 2,500 words in that time. I'm not one of those 10,000 word a day people. There are people out there that totally do that. And that's awesome. That I just mentally, I'm done after about 3,000 words. But I literally the very first time I used this method, I had a novella due. I was working with a small publisher in 2 weeks, and I wrote it in 1 week using that very first time. And I was like, oh my gosh,
it works.
It's a novella. It's 27,000 words. It wasn't huge, but for me to go, oh my gosh, I could totally do this in a week. It was really mind blowing. It's like, wow, this actually works. Okay, that's awesome. So I love it, and the fact that other people are using it and are like, wow, this is really, really great at getting my thoughts down and getting these be able to push the books out on a regular basis so I can actually build a readership and build a following is really important if that's what you want to do in the indie world.
Yeah. I think that's something that you and I are both constantly attuned into is like, let's make the writing part as efficient and enjoyable as possible, because it cannot take the whole day. Like it just cannot. Like
either have that luxury, but most of us don't. Most of us have families and other jobs and things that we've got to do. And it can be hard to find 2 hours a day. You certainly don't even have to do that. But I think you can be super powerful, even if all you've got is 30 minutes a day or 45 minutes. You can get a lot done when you know what you're going to write. If you're having to sit down there and think about things and re-enter the story every time, that is what creates so much anxiety and stress and writer's block, and it really keeps you from being efficient. So when you know what you're going to write, then you can just, sit down and type it. People talk about, the story played out like a movie in my head. That's where we want to be. Because that's when we're super efficient. And so that is the goal of the whole novel blueprint, is to get all of that heavy lifting done up front, so that when you sit down to write, you know what you're going to write and you can make the best use of your time.
And have you found that this blueprint method is useful across genres?
Yeah, it really is. It doesn't matter what because story is story, and the human brain is wired for story. It learns from story. It really wants to identify with the protagonist. It's trying to learn to survive and thrive, and it wants your book to tell it how to do it. And whether that means like how to survive fighting aliens, or how to survive a romance, or whatever it might be, like the brain is still wired for that information, however it might come across. And so it wants that. So that's one of the things that we tapped into, is creating the protagonist that the brain wants to follow. Because if you have a protagonist that the brain is like, oh, you're nothing like me, I can totally not relate to you, I don't care what happens to you, nobody's going to read your book, and nobody's going to care how exciting and how much of a roller coaster ride it is. They don't care about the protagonist. And so making that character somebody that the readers want to follow through the pages, it doesn't matter the genre, that is the key thing.
So good. So good. Okay. So you're on book 12, you're writing book 12 now. They're different series and things like that. Even you have different author names too, which is really cool. We get into some nitty gritty, like book marketing stuff.
Right.
But what have you noticed has really just fundamentally changed about your experience being an author over the last, years?
Wow. Yeah. It's become much more business-like. I think at the beginning, I thought, I'll just, write some books and put them out there and, see what happens. And I have learned, I just got back from the 20 Books 50K conference in Vegas, which is very business oriented. They don't really talk much about craft. It's very much about how do you run this as a business. And so marketing is super important. You need to understand your market and how to reach them. Some people may just want to write a book just because they want to write a book and they don't really care what happens to it. But I find that most people really do want to get their book into the hands of the most readers possible. And so to do that, you need to understand marketing. You need to understand it like a business. You need to make good use of your time. All these things that go into running it like kind of an entrepreneurial type thing, like you would if you were doing any other sort of business. The book happens to be your product. And so it's a little interesting in that you are the creator of the product and you're also running the business at the same time. And so sometimes you have to switch these different hats. But the indie book market, particularly the ebook market with Amazon and all of its publishing stuff, that made it so accessible to everybody. It's really matured now. Several years ago, it was newer and you could get away with writing whatever and people would eat it up. But now it's so saturated that you really do have to have a good quality book. You need to treat it like a business. You need to do the things that you need to do marketing wise to get it in front of people. So it takes a little bit of being, like an entrepreneur, having that kind of business mindset that you wouldn't necessarily as an artist or creative person might not always want to do. So it's really important to realize that you're not going to just be able to sit down and write a book and just throw it out there. You need to get some good advice and some good wisdom and some things from people who've gone before to figure out the best way. So you are making good use of this. You don't want to just put a book out there that you really want people to read and then have it go nowhere because you didn't know how to put it to the market correctly.
Yeah. I mean, that is like the double-edged sword, right? It's like, okay, it's more accessible to everyone. Now we can get our books out there, but we also are more responsible for our books. Like we got to really step up and learn what we need to learn. And I mean, to be really honest, like this is just the way that the publishing industry is going. I know a lot of us have sort of nostalgia of like, oh, wasn't it nice when traditional publishers would just do it all for you?
Right.
I'm not sure that was ever really the case.
It never really was.
and B, like we actually have so much more agency. Like we can really determine our own success with how much we're willing to put into it. How much, yes, we are worried about the craft of the writing and we're worried about really connecting with our readers and getting our books into the right readership. So what have you, I'm trying to think about which direction I want to go. There's so many.
I know. We've talked about every aspect between the two of us.
I know. Yeah, we should have just like a whole YouTube playlist of like Morgan and Jennifer's conversations. So if we're thinking about someone they're writing their first novel and they're just now getting to the point they're like, okay, I'm comfortable. Like I kind of know my genre, maybe even my subgenre. Like I've got kind of some ideas for the structure. Like what are some of those early mistakes or early pieces of wisdom that you would have for kind of that first time novelist?
Yeah, I think the main thing from the very beginning, it's really important to know your market. This is not a problem if you are an avid reader of your genre. Like in romance alone, there are so many subgenres and so many tropes, which are kind of like those themes, like billionaire and cowboy, like those are super hot right now. And so really know your genre. I mean, in fantasy and all this, there's all these kind of subgenres. And if you don't get it right, there's two things that'll happen. One, it'll just kind of fall flat because nobody will quite know where to put your book. Or two, your readers, you might set up the wrong reader expectations. And they're going to be really angry and leave you nasty reviews because you did not meet their expectations. So really important to know your market. You can go to the Amazon Top 100, see what's out there, see what's selling. You don't have to write a book you don't want to write just to write to the market, but find that niche where what you want to write matches with what is selling in the market and make sure that you're hitting that using the right language and the right tone and colors and all those kinds of things. So it does sort of begin with the marketing. You really do need to know that. You don't want to write a book, and I've heard this story from many, many authors. I wrote this book, but it really didn't, it was like 5 different genres, and I enjoyed it, but nobody ever read it because they didn't really know what to do with it. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to waste your time if this is what you really want to spend time on. So for sure, hit the right market. Make sure you know that. It's also so important that you have an editor. I cannot tell how many times, people will say, it was a great story, but I couldn't get past the typos, or I couldn't get past the weird sentence structure. A good editor is so important in helping making that just perfect. And a good editor will respect your voice, respect what you're trying to accomplish, not change it, but help you make it the best it can be. So that's super important. So make sure, and they're not cheap. Good editors are not cheap. There is a bit of an investment that you have to make. But remember, this is a business. So you do have to put some money into it. And sometimes you might only be able to afford a little bit, and that's fine. Sometimes you swap and you trade, you do things with people to get what you need. That's totally fine. People kind of bootstrap their way up all the time if you have to do that. But if you do have the money, and think about things that you spend money on. I mean, people spend money on, golfing and tennis and cruises and all sorts of things that are really wonderful experiences, but they're ephemeral. And a book is a lifetime, right? It leaves a legacy. So you might need to make some trade-offs in your life to say, okay, maybe we don't do the big vacation this year because I'm going to do a book, because long-term, this is going to be something that's going to really provide lasting value for me. So some things to think about, just about, how you want to prioritize things in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously I so agree.
Yeah.
I think with the independent publishing world becoming a more sophisticated market, we know what is a book that's been well edited and what's not. We know a book that's been well put together and one that was just kind of slapdash. So we are only going to recommend to our friends, we're only going to leave reviews on books that we really feel like met those kind of minimum expectations of, they knew the market, they did their research, they did the editing. And this is, like you said, the foundation. This is the first book that you're putting out as a career author. And take it seriously. I mean, we all want to be taken seriously, but we got to take ourselves seriously first. Right. And I think this is kind of, for a lot of us, our first big step is that first book. Another question I wanted to hit on with you, Jennifer, is people ask a lot about am I going to make back all my money with my first book? And something that you and I've talked a lot about is the benefit of continuing to release books and building out sort of a body of work and a fuller readership. What have you seen for your own business, growth as an author as you put out more and more books?
Yeah, it's really hard to make your money back till about book 3. So kind of what I'm recommending in the fiction world, nonfiction is a little different, but in the fiction world, it takes time to build that readership. Some readers don't want to read book 1 till the whole series is out. I found that true when I finished my last series this summer. Oh my gosh, all of a sudden the readership took off. There are people who are waiting because they want to binge read. And that's an interesting phenomenon now, right? We binge watch shows. And I think that entertainment mindset is coming to books as well. And so the idea of putting out a series really quickly so people can binge read it is really important. And so all of your costs, when the more books you have out in a series, your costs get spread over all those books. Most of the time you do your advertising on the first book. You want people into that first book. You can do a heavily discounted first book. You can do free. There's a number of marketing strategies that when you have a series out, that read through will be very valuable. So for example, a reader in my romantic suspense series, if they read book 1, they're worth a lot more to me. The read through is so high that they're going to most likely go and read all of those books. So I might give them book 1 for free because I know they're going to pay for book 2 and 3. So the point being that it's like with any business, you have these startup costs. So your first book maintains a lot of those startup costs that you're going to have. But the more books you have out, the more the costs are spread out, but then your readership goes up. So your income goes up, but your costs don't necessarily grow. So you have to wrap your mind around the idea that it is a long game. It takes some time to get that readership built up. But what you want is the people who love you, who are your super fans, who are going to read everything you put out because they're so excited about you. They want to open your newsletters. They want to follow you on Facebook. They're very excited. Those are the people you want to cultivate. And it takes a little bit of time to do that. Nonfiction is a little bit different because sometimes, depending on the topic, you can sometimes make money back on that book if it's a hot topic. But sometimes with nonfiction, the goal is simply to be seen as an authority, and it can be a gateway to conferences and books and teaching and seminars and courses and all that kind of thing. And it's just one piece of the bigger puzzle. So I always encourage people to look at the big picture. What do you try? What are your long-term goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And then see this as an investment in making those things happen. But if you turn around and you think, oh, I wrote a book, I should be making $50,000 this month, this is not going to happen. It's just not, maybe it could, I don't know, but I don't know anybody who's done that. So
what we do know are people who continue to put out book after book after book. They get better at writing. The writing gets faster and easier. The readership is already excited for your next book. And you start to see that incremental leveling up. And that's exciting in its own way. It's like those markers of progress. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. I'm a career author now. I mean, maybe, I don't know at what point you start to feel that way, but
yeah. Well, and there's something really cool about getting a letter back from a reader who is just like, I just love this book. I can't wait for the next one, or I sat down to read it and I got up like 8 hours later. I couldn't put it down, or the reviews that are like that. I mean, you write a lot in your own world. And so to have that kind of response and that feedback, I mean, there's really nothing like it. It's super cool. It's just awesome to know that your words impacted somebody else's life. And that's amazing. Like, that's just one of those things, like, money can't buy that. So it is pretty cool to get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm okay at this. Like, people actually want to read what I have to write. That's amazing.
It is amazing. So cool. And if folks want to join us in our novel blueprint method deep dive class, where you take us all the way through the novel blueprint method, they also will have opportunities to ask you questions about their own novels. And that level of feedback is super valuable in this marketplace. So yeah, any words for anyone who might be considering joining us this weekend?
Yeah, you totally should. Our Q&As are so much fun. Like, we just love being in there. Like, we have become this group that just encourages each other, and you get asked questions about your particular story, and we kind of brainstorm and talk about things. It's really a highlight for me. I love coming in there and talking about, learning about what you guys are doing, and just, I'm excited about your stories. I love it. There's so many creative people in the world that it's just fun to be around them. So I think it's just, I don't know, for me, it's just a highlight. I mean, the teaching, I enjoy teaching, but teaching is kind of very much more one way. But when we have the Q&A interaction, it's really a lot of fun. So I highly recommend that part.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming on, for spending some time with me today. Good luck getting your house put back together.
I told my daughter, I said, 2 things we have to find today: the cookbooks and the coffee grinder. And she's like, we're going to have to open every box. We're going to have to. So that's what it makes me today.
Well, good luck.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Fun as always. All right. Bye-bye.
Oh, guys. Okay, so that was the Jennifer Crosswhite. And I just want to let you guys know that if you are considering joining us, our courses are open to new writing students this weekend. We've got special pricing, free bonuses. If you're writing the fiction books, paperravenbooks.com/novel blueprint. Nonfiction writers, you'll be hanging out more with me, paperravenbooks.com/ready to write. So go check those pages out, or the relevant page for you, to see if this is a good fit for you. We do have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you just want to check it out and see if our method of teaching book writing suits you, check it out. And we're running special pricing, free bonuses around helping you do the writing, helping you do the publishing piece, helping you with the marketing. We've got all of that happening for you today and through the weekend. But this is at the end of this weekend, we are going to close enrollment. So go check those out. So today we're talking with a whole bunch of writers who are writing all sorts of different stories, who are different pieces and places in the writing process. And our next writer who I'm going to bring on with us is Lori Scott. And Lori, I have had the pleasure of being so in her journey with her for years. The first time Lori emailed me was she had just finished listening to my audiobook. I don't remember exactly when it was. Lori will, I'm sure, let me know. 2.5, 3 years ago, something like that. And she was like, I listened to your audiobook. I'm going to do it. I'm going to write my book. And it was such an exciting time. She has written her book. She has published her book. It is now in all versions. She is living her life. She's thinking about her. What I want you to see with Lori's story is how someone can share their own story in such a powerful way, and what it looks like, on the other side when other people start to read your story. I know a lot of us worry about that, like, oh, I'm sharing a lot of vulnerable information. How's it going to be received? What are people going to think? Are they going to respond well? And Lori's book topic is a little controversial, but so important for today's conversation. And Lori is brave and courageous, and she is out there sharing her story and living her life as an author. So Lori, I'm going to bring you on. Thank you so much for being with me here today, Lori. I love talking with you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. This is so much fun. Except that, why did I have to follow Jennifer?
I'm sorry. Someone had to. I know you're the best to follow Jennifer, really.
I mean, she edited part of my book. I mean, it's like, she's the best. She's the best.
So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about, what is your book about? How did you decide that, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to write this book?
Yeah. My book is called God Doesn't Make Mistakes, Confessions of a Transgender Christian, because that's who I am. I'm a Christian and I'm transgender. And I knew for the longest, since I was little, that I was different. Something wasn't quite right. And growing up in a conservative evangelical home, I just knew this isn't something you talk about and tell people about. And so I lived my entire life never telling anybody, knowing that I had all this inside me. And it wasn't until I tried to do everything to be normal. And I even got married. And there just came a point when I couldn't fake it. And you say fake it till you make it. Well, I wasn't going to make it. And so eventually got to the point where I was just ready to kill myself. And I talk about where I had the tree picked out where I was going to drive my car, massive oak tree in the foothills, the Sierra foothills, where I wanted to drive my car into just to end it all and be done. And then how God just reached out to a friend of mine, and she said the impossible words, which were, have you ever talked to anybody who actually knows anything about this? And that's which I like. She's a wonderful Christian. Her dad's a pastor. It was just like, can I even do that? That thought had never occurred to me. So long story short, it took me on a whole nother journey that led to me finally getting to the point where, it was this or die. And and then through what I felt was a lot of acceptance by the church and all, turned out to be a big rejection, lots of depression and everything. And got me to a point where I got back to where I was okay and found a church that I loved and realized that, you know what, I still need to work on this, but as it relates to the church part, not so much on the personal part. So after 25 years of my old therapist, found my new therapist, a Christian therapist. And that's how I figured out that it was time to write a book. It wasn't even my idea. She's the one that put the seed in my head. I had thought, oh no, I got to start all over with a new therapist. I have 25 years of stuff how do I catch her up on that? So I emailed her a thick list of stuff, emails, all kinds of stuff in the past just to get her up to speed. Otherwise it would take 6 months to get caught up. And there was one email that I had titled to a couple of pastor friends of mine, am I called or am I crazy? And that
was the original title of the book, I think.
Well, actually, it turns out that's a title of one of the chapters now.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But and I go, that'd be a good title for a book. And she looked at me, and she had the printout of all the stuff. She goes, "You've already started it." And it just all of a sudden, ding. That's when that light came on, and that all of that drove just this need to really help other Christians who are transgender understand that the church doesn't hate them. The church might really misunderstand them. That I believe is really true. The church doesn't hate them. It just sometimes it's interpreted that way, or they're told that by actually people other than who's in the church.
Yeah.
So, and then I've also really felt deeply about letting people in the church know the story of people who are transgender, and that, they're not all activists marching in the street, so it was going through all of that made me decide to write the book. And that's how I knew, is just when my therapist goes, "You've already started it."
Wow.
And there we are. So
we talked earlier this morning with Becca, who is in the middle of writing her book. She has dissociative identity disorder. So she's still very much in this process of like, wow, I'm sharing a lot of vulnerable information in this book. And I remember having similar conversations with you not so long ago, like a couple of years ago. And it's hard to relive those difficult moments, to write them down, to imagine that other people are going to read them. Do you remember what it was like to write those?
It was hard. It was hard. And fortunately, being a pack rat, what helped me is I've got emails going back to 2000. And so as I went through emails, I remembered stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Um, and writing it was hard. There are parts of it. Um, Being a memoir, part of it that was easy is that as opposed to like Jennifer writing writing fiction, is I'm not making anything up.
Yeah.
I don't have to make a thing up. It's just, here's my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so writing it was hard. Actually, the editing process was harder because rereading it, reliving it again and again and again was just as hard. I mean, it's hard when you're actually writing it down for the first time because you're reliving it. You're actually typing it slower than the moment it actually may go by. And so some of the most painful moments might take an hour to write. And so, yeah, you have a box of Kleenexes nearby. And the important thing that I had to remember is that it was just a first draft. Nobody else was really going to have to see it. And so it could be really ugly and really messy, and that was okay. But yeah, so it's very, very hard. But I felt that it was so important. At this point, I felt it was just so important to do, and I really felt led to do it. So what was going to become of it I was going to be okay with. It would be what it would be.
Yeah. And what has the response been on the other side now that the book is out, is getting out to other people? Like, what's been your sense of how people have responded to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, the most amazing part is to get the book written. I actually did a GoFundMe.
Yeah.
And the response of that before the book was ever published, just when people knew that I was writing this book, and most everybody knew my story. There's actually my biggest contributor I've never even met because they live in Australia. Gave $1,000 toward the book. She felt so strongly toward the message and she had read some of my stuff on my website. So she had an inkling of, who I was and what I was about. And people actually ponied up money before the book was ever published, just so that it would get published.
Yeah.
That's how important they felt it was to get out there. Since coming out, it really, I'm never ceased to be amazed at how people are touched by it. And what a difference it's making for them, how it's given them hope. The entire time, and I'm sure I'm not sure anyone's going to want to do that. Who would want to buy this? Why would anybody want? And I just said, I'm just doing it because I felt I'm supposed to do it. So I did it.
Yeah.
I go, and if anybody reads it, then they read it. And putting it out in all the formats, putting it out in Kindle has been great, especially with the Kindle Direct Publishing being part of that, in that I'm able to give it away. For me, it was important to get the message out, to get my message out.
Yep.
And being able to give away copies periodically, which they let you do, has been amazing. I've given away probably over 2,000 copies of my book on Kindle format. And it's literally all over the world. And the audiobook has been the biggest surprise because to date, we're at about 300 copies have been sold just in exactly a year, and with virtually zero marketing, and just people find it. It's paid for itself.
That's awesome.
And I mean, 300 copies, it's like, oh, people sell millions of copies. I know, but who? I got a call. I actually talked to a person a week ago on the phone. He wanted to talk because he listened to my audiobook and was so touched by it, and it spoke so specifically to him, and he identified so much with it that he wanted to just have an opportunity to talk over the telephone.
That's amazing.
And so it really has been an amazing and rewarding experience.
What I love about your story, Lori, is that you have such a heart for the mission, like the message, like the people on the other end of the book. And like it for you, it's never really been about the money because you're out there to literally change people's lives. And like to get that direct feedback, to have those direct conversations with people is phenomenal. Like, yes, you had the blog before you wrote the book, but there's something about having a book out there that's getting to an entirely new audience of people and letting them see your entire journey through the pages of the book. I mean, they get to know you in such a deeper way. It's amazing.
They know me very well through my book. I don't keep much back.
Yeah, I know. So what do you remember any of the like parts of the book writing process that were especially difficult for you? I mean, I know writing through those painful memories, but anything that comes to mind that you just really struggled with in that time?
Yes.
Can you tell me about it?
How do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
Just that's all. That was just my question. How do I do this?
Yeah.
It was in August, so it must have been 2.5. No, it had to be 3.5 years ago. August, 3+ months ago, when I went to Audible and downloaded 1, 2, 3, I think about 8 audiobooks on writing books. Yours was the only one that stuck.
Wow. Oh, that's cool.
Really, it was the only one that stuck. There were some, and they were really, one was like a college course, what do they call them? The great essays. I don't know what they call them, the great something or others. Mm-hmm. And it's just like listening to a college professor just go on and on and on. And it was just so boring. But yours stuck. And I realized I can do this. Mm-hmm. Yours was the one book that made me think I could do this with your help. But I didn't think just from the book. It's like, oh, okay, great. But it gave me, it's like, I understand those steps. Those are doable steps. And then I contacted you. But yeah, I had no idea. I'm not even a reader. I never considered myself a writer. I'm not even much of a reader. And so writing a book, I really had no clue. I mean, I had to kind of investigate. All right, does the foreword or the introduction come first? Which comes first? How do you do a table of content? I really didn't know. And so, and how do you do a book cover? Mm-hmm. And come up with an actual title and all of that. I had no clue. And you had such good advice, including doing the book cover first before going to the GoFundMe, so that we had something to show. Yeah, professional. This is what it's going to be, and I think that was a big part in making how we made our goal. Mm-hmm. In fact, is that we go, yeah, this is real. We're not just thinking about it and hoping and wishing. It's like, no, we've already done step one. We just need help getting the rest of the way. But everything from the editing, which I learned so much from your notes and Jennifer's notes on, it's like, oh, I do that a lot. I'll just say, well, every now and then something will come along, but just like it's no, or like, I'll use like a lot. I use just a lot. And as soon as it was pointed out to me, I could see it's like, holy cow. Yes, I do that a lot. Don't I? And then in rereading my own book, I went through, there's 4 paragraphs about my high school graduation. We had a streaker. I had to direct the alma mater out on a football field without a band because the band left because they threw firecrackers in the band from the students. And I'm reading it through in my draft, going through that. And I'm finished with the last part. And I go, what the hell does this have to do with the book? And I drew 4 red lines through all those paragraphs. That's why you're wondering, I don't remember reading that in the book, because it's not there. Because it didn't have anything to do with the message of the book. It was just a cute story. Yeah. So, no, I learned everything. I didn't learn everything about writing a book because I think I still have things to learn, but everything I did learn, I learned from you.
Oh, thank
and the
you.
team on getting it done. And I've gotten people have complimented on, oh, you're such a good writer. You write so well. I'm like going, if you say so.
And I mean, are you still spinning ideas for a next book? Is that still
Absolutely
a possibility?
Oh, no, it's going to happen.
It's gonna happen.
It's going to
Okay.
happen. It's formulating in my head, and I'm keeping notes.
Okay.
So the first one was about me, and the next one is going to be directed more toward kind of the church. It's just like, like, folks, please, not to grab them by the neck and slap them in the face or anything, but to kind of go into more. Well, here's why I think. Here are some of the issues I think you have. Let me address them. Type of thing, and because I they need to get to know people. They need, I heard the other day somebody say it's much easier. It's much harder to hate or to dismiss. And it's so much harder to dismiss when you look at somebody in the eye than it is to dismiss an idea. You can dismiss an idea like the concept of somebody being transgender. They're just weird. But if you actually know somebody and look them in the eye, it's kind of a lot much harder to dismiss them. And so trying to show more of my heart to people, and like, no, here's what I think. It's like, actually, folks, I'm a lot like you. We think about and agree on most of things.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be a powerful book. I cannot wait. And we'll get to be on the journey with you when you're ready to do that book. So yeah, you're not getting rid of me, Lori, just so you know.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll at least get started. It'll get started next year for sure.
2020.
2020.
Do it. So if you think about someone else who might be in a similar position to where you were a few years ago, you've got this, they've got this really powerful story, maybe like a life, some part of their life that they lived that they're nervous about sharing to the world, but they just know it needs to be a book. It needs to get out there. Do you have any sort of like words of wisdom or encouragement for that writer?
Yeah, don't doubt the importance of your message. You will be, without a doubt, you will be your first and probably worst critic. It's just going to happen. You're going to doubt it. And there may along the way be some other people who might question it and might want you, are you sure? And they might even say why you can't do it. Don't listen to them, and don't listen to that inner critic in you. I doubted the importance of my message, but I did it anyway because I felt like I was supposed to. It's kind of like I felt called to do it. It's like if you think God calls you to do something, it's best to answer that door. And so I did. And I've just been continually amazed. And I've got a good friend whom I actually mentioned in my book. And I know a lot about her life. And I think I've convinced her now she needs to tell her story. Because there are so many people who can identify with what she's gone through growing up in a very dysfunctional family, and physical and sexual abuse by other family members, uncles, whatnot, at an early age. The fact that she's alive is a miracle. And so the importance of your message can't be understated. So if you even feel like, there are people out there just like you who have been through what you've been through. And not very many people are able to actually have the strength. It takes some inner strength to write it down and share it. It takes some vulnerability, which is hard. But it's that vulnerability and putting yourself out there that's what people are identifying with. That's what makes it real and makes it believable.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lori. Thank you for being with me here today. Thank you just for being so courageous. Like every time I talk with you, I am just blown away about how
Oh.
you answered the call. Like that is a big call from God to write down into words like the most difficult parts of your life and to share them. So I feel like you have way more courage than I do. And I'm constantly inspired to be like, you know what? I can share more. I can share more of me.
Well, I'll tell you, it was totally a God thing that, boom, I found your book. I knew immediately, followed up with you. And it just clicked one thing after another. And it's just been amazing working with you and your team. It's just amazing. So I'm looking forward to the next round.
Let's do the next book for sure. 2020, Lori, I'm going to hold you to it.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh, guys, there's so many books out there and so many types of books out there, but we never know when our message is going to hit the right person, to fall into the hands, into the life of someone who just needs to hear it right then and right there. So yeah, if you are someone who, like Lori, just feels like I have something that I really and truly feel called to share, sometimes it is a matter of showing up and just saying yes and just putting the words on the page. And again, I mean, we've heard this throughout today, you know, that it's so much of the journey is being willing to show up and to put words on the page. And yeah, knowing how to do it, like having some sort of guidance, some sort of plan. You know, there are so many challenges that I hear from writers and have heard for so many years. I mean, for some of us, it's a matter of schedule and routine. And we're thinking, okay, yes, I'm very willing to do the book and I want to put in the time. But my schedule is just so crazy. You would not believe, you know, how many things I do for work and for travel and for kids and for people I'm taking care of and for organizations I'm a part of. Where is the time? I certainly have felt that. That is one of the reasons why I really leaned so deeply into writing coaching, is because, I mean, heck, as a business owner and a mom of 4 children, like I get it. I understand that at a very deep and personal level, that finding the time can be very difficult. And yet what Jennifer and I were hitting on earlier is like, yes, the time is a piece of it, but also when you do carve out the time and you are sitting at the computer, are you typing words? You know, are you actually writing on the book, or are you just sort of like meandering with words? You know, we always want to enable you to know that when you sit down to do the writing, maybe it's not every single day, probably won't be every day, you know, but when you have those pockets that you can carve out, are you sitting down? Are you doing productive writing that's really moving you forward in finishing your book? And everyone's going to have different rhythms. Some people are going to be short writing sessions on a more regular basis. Other people are going to be longer writing sessions less frequently. Some people batch, you know, we talked to Jolie earlier this morning, where it's like, okay, 30 days, I'm going hard, I'm going deep, you know, I want to finish this thing. There's so many different writing rhythms out there. What we want to do is give you tools to help you figure out what your writing rhythms are. So we have tracking sheets, we use productivity hacks, like people have mentioned the timer several times today. We have different ways in which we want to help you become a more efficient and productive writer. And that's really one of the skills that once you tap into your writing productivity rhythms, you can use that, yes, for writing this book, for writing future books, for writing anything, right? For getting the things done in life that you need to get done. And so I'm going to cover some of the common challenges and struggles that people come to me with. And I just want you to know that all of this is what we talk about in our writing courses. So I'm going to put this link up here just to remind you to go check out the details of these signature book writing courses that we are enrolling for this weekend only. This is not usually open. We open up occasionally, and this is one of those weekends where we are opening up for enrollment. For nonfiction, you go to paperravenbooks.com/ready-to-write for those details. For fiction, you go to paperravenbooks.com/novel-blueprint for those details. And for both courses, we have special pricing going on this weekend. We have free bonuses included this weekend that are just for you guys. And we are kicking off on Monday. And this is all about laying the foundations for your book so that 2020 really and truly is the year that your book happens. Okay, so some common challenges that people come to me with. One is schedule. We sort of talked about that. Those writing productivity hacks, to be really honest, they're like tricks that other people use in order to get the words down faster so that you are not spending, 200 hours writing your book, but maybe 75 or 100 hours writing your book. If you can cut that in half, then your book writing journey becomes way, way easier. And we want you to enjoy the process. One of the secrets to writing more quickly and efficiently is to actually have fun while you're writing it. If you know where you're going, if you have, some sort of structure and an idea of the book that you're writing and how it's going to more or less look, you will enjoy every writing session more because you will feel the progress. Some other issues that people come to me with is when they're doing a ton of research. So, you're fascinated by this topic, right? That's why you want to write about it. And maybe you're reading a ton of books, or you've been to a lot of classes and seminars, and you've gathered a lot of research and information about this topic. And you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with all of this, the notes and the contents and the journals and like the stacks of papers or the, folders and folders of digital files. And we have a whole method for really digging through all of that content. And really it comes down to being able and willing to put your research into different sort of phases, basically. It is very, very difficult to both research and write at the same time. It is difficult to absorb other people's words, to consume other people's content, and to output your own creativity. So that we find that a lot of folks, what we really need is like a balance. We need a phase of time where we are consuming, we're bringing in, and we need a phase of time when we are outputting, right? So for me, the most kind of efficient way to write books is to have a research phase at the beginning. Now, hint, most of you guys who are watching this, you probably already have done a lot of research. And so once we can, put the research aside for a little while and allow ourselves to write a first draft, what that helps us to do is to process our own message, our own words, our own interpretation of that research, and really put our stake in the ground of what we believe. What is our perspective? What is our commentary? What is our philosophy or theory on this in our own words? Not to be super heavily influenced by other people's words. We've already consumed their ideas. You've got their ideas. But to give ourselves the space in that first draft, just writing mode, to put other people's words aside and really lean into our own words. That is where we find our own message. And we're going to be talking to someone soon who, in the process of writing, her entire book changed. She had done a lot of research, and then she gave herself the space to write, and she found a whole new angle for her message. So we'll be talking about her story coming up very soon. And then, of course, we are methodical, thorough people. So we want to put a research phase after we do the writing as well. So we want to revisit the research. We want to think, okay, which pieces of the research do I want to make sure are included in the book? Which questions did I not answer well? What other sort of questions do I want to continue to research so I can bring that back in? But the important thing is to kind of delineate, to decide, like, this is research time, this is not research time. And you know what? A lot of people don't talk about that. They just assume that you know how to do this like research phase, and no one teaches this stuff. The only reason I had to figure it out for myself is because I was an academic. I was getting a doctorate in sociology. I had to figure it out. I was working with other academics. I had to help them figure it out. And so I've brought a lot of this into our book writing methodology, particularly for our nonfiction writers. Some other challenges that people come to is they are like, okay, well, I have so much information, so many stories. I actually feel like I need to put them into very specific mind maps and outlines. I need the whole thing like mapped out perfectly before I can even begin starting writing. And for nonfiction authors, a lot of us, one of the things that we really need to consider is that we're going to discover what it is that we want to say in the process of writing. So just like I mentioned, we're going to be talking with someone who she sort of changed the angle of her book. That happens when you're writing. And so what we want to do is we want to do enough structure and organization that we have, the confidence that, okay, this is a book that I'm pretty sure I can at least start writing. I can see where the beginning would be. I can see the end. I can see where the reader will start the book with me. I can see the transformation that I want to happen at the end of the book. And I can see some of those chapters, some of those topics, some of those milestones that I want to hit. Okay, I have enough confidence I can begin. And what a lot of folks who haven't published a book yet wouldn't know, because you haven't done it yet, is that once you write your full first draft, you're going to come back and you're going to revise. More than likely, you're going to restructure quite a bit of it. And that's okay. It's very, very normal, because you discover so much of your message and the stories you want to share and the information that you want to share. And you end up needing to kind of like move some things around, take some things out, add in. So a lot of the revision, that very first revision that you're going to do as an author, is really rethinking through the structure of your book. So it's like, okay, get a structure in place at the beginning that works for writing, and then know that you're going to come back and you're probably going to restructure. So we spend a lot of time in our courses actually really diving deeply into, okay, where does research fit into this? What does my, sort of rough structure look like? How am I doing that writing process? And how am I coming back to it and revising in a way that's going to make the book so much stronger, a much more compelling book? And, people ask me sometimes, what's different, Morgan, about the way that you teach writing books that's different than the way other people teach writing books? And to be really honest, some of the book writing courses out there, they spend very little time on the actual writing process. It is very like, slam bam. It's like, oh, I'll just put a mind map together and then write. And it's like, yeah, but there's so much more that happens in that Word document. How are we not going to address the, 50, 60, 70 hours that we're spending in a Word document to write the first draft? It's like, we need to be talking about that. What does that actually look like? I'm very passionate about all of us writing high quality, compelling books. I don't want our books to be just bestsellers because we figured out an algorithm. I want our books to be long lasting bestsellers that have true impact on people's lives, so that, like Lori was just saying, we get someone who says, I just want to talk to you on the phone because you understand me. Your book was amazing. Like that's the depth of connection that we want with our readers. And that truly, truly happens because, yes, they find our book on Amazon, they click in, they buy it, but they start reading it and they keep reading it and they turn the page and they read the next chapter and they get all the way through, and they are so compelled by the book itself that they're like, I must contact this person. That's exactly what Lori did when she listened to my book. She was like, oh, this person gets me. I'm going to send her an email. We got on the phone. Like this is how relationships happen in the pages of a book, is through the thoughtful construction of the structure of the book. Now, it does not mean that you have to have it all figured out before you start writing. What it means is you got to have a process that you're willing to follow to put together a structure, to trust the process enough to write through the chapters of your book, and then to also know that you're going to come back and you're going to restructure. So we talk a lot about that within our nonfiction writing course, paperravenbooks.com/ready-to-write. And you guys, fiction, so similar. That's why Jennifer has a blueprint. So if you go to paperravenbooks.com/novel blueprint, you'll see more details there. This is why we need to have a firm anchor at the beginning of the book. What does the beginning really look like? Who were the characters? What are their backstories, their internal motivations? And like, where are they going? What's that ending look like? And then, some steps in the middle so that you know how you're going to get there. That gives you so much more confidence in writing a high quality novel. That if we're talking about writing multiple novels, then we are right there with you, that we want the first one. It doesn't have to be the perfect, end all be all novel, but it does have to be a solidly constructed novel that's enjoyable for people to read. And we're very, very passionate about that. That's why the novel blueprint method exists in the first place. Some other challenges and I guess questions that people often have, and I'm not even looking at the comments. If you have other comments or your own challenges, your own struggles, I would encourage you to reach out to me, either comment on, the thread or one of the videos that we have going on today, or just shoot me a message, on Facebook. You can just shoot us a message and I will respond to you directly. Some of the other questions and challenges that people have when it comes to writing a book is really thinking through which is the right book for me to write for my goals. And we got into that a little bit this morning with Zan, and I had, talked very much in depth with Tracy about which book is the right book. And it's going to be different answers for different people, it's going to depend on your goals. And that's something we talk a lot about within our private author community. And of course, when you join our signature writing courses, you join our private author community. We have everyone in the same community precisely for this reason, because so many of us are interested in writing multiple books, maybe even different types of books, and yet we are the same person, right? We have goals for our life, a singular life. So although we might have different...
Someone's at the front door.
I forgot to silence my Google Nest, sorry. So although we might have different projects that we want them to contribute to our life, right? So we only have one life. So how we're going to spend, our 24 hours a day and our 168 hours a week and our 52 weeks a year, we can only work on so many projects at a time, and usually in a particular order. How do we choose? Well, it depends on your goals, and it depends on how you want to continue to work with people, how you want to work each day. Some of us, we're writing nonfiction books because we have some amount of expertise, or we want to gain even more expertise in our industry. Maybe we've been working with some clients, or maybe we've done some research, or maybe we've lived a kind of life that people ask us questions about all the time. And we want to work with our readers in a deeper way. So the book is like an introduction or an overview of maybe our methodology or what we've learned, our information, how we've done life in this way. And the book is an invitation to a deeper relationship. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. It could be working with people one-on-one as a consultant or a coach. It could be inviting people into a group experience, maybe as like a membership or a group coaching. It could be inviting people to participate in online classes or real life classes and workshops and seminars with you. It could be hosting retreats or in-person experiences with them. But the book is that beacon, that call to people to say, hey, this is the conversation that I want to have with you. And they are invited deeper into that relationship with you. For novels, a lot of us, the reason we want to write a novel is, yes, for a community of people, but we also want to be able to just give them more and more stories. We have kind of this wellspring of stories that we want to give them. We want to provide to them for their inspiration, for entertainment, for just, living a better life. And we see ourselves doing a lot of writing. We see ourselves putting out novels every year or two and continuing in that work. The idea of having time just to write is really appealing to us. So they're different goals. And that's something that we talk a lot about in our community. That is exactly why Jennifer and I work together, because as authors, we know that your life, you're often considering different types of books for different reasons. And we've got all the resources that you need within our private author community. And some other questions that I'm often getting from folks, I just want to cover, I guess, very quickly what Lori touched on is like, who am I to write this book? And I think when I bring Connie on next, we're gonna dive into this too. But who am I to write this book? Like, who's really gonna read this? Do I have sort of the credentials? Like, why me? Why would I be the one to write this book, and who's gonna read it? And to be honest, I mean, you feel the call. There's no reason you would be on this live stream right now, even if you're watching the replay, unless you felt some sort of calling, some intense curiosity that just won't go away, that says, maybe you should write a book. And for some of us, we know we're going to write the book. We plan to write the book, but something internal is really holding us back. A lot of times that's just a desire for permission to hear someone else say, yes, you should write this book, to hear your book concept, to hear your ideas, and to reflect back to you, yes, like this is a book. This is something that you need to write. And a lot of times, we won't know for sure what the outcome is going to be until we put ourselves, in the limelight, in that spotlight, and say, okay, I'm doing it. I am going to sit and I'm going to write 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 and I'm going to go through all the revision and all the editing and all the painstaking steps. And I'm going to put the book out there. And then I'm going to keep talking about the book. I'm going to keep talking about the book. I'm going to keep talking about the book. And if we can maintain our self-talk to get us through all those phases and get the book out there and in people's hands, I guarantee you that is when you will have your validation that, oh, holy smokes, there was a reason I was called to this. Now, maintaining that grit, that perseverance is exactly why we're here, because it's not easy. It's not. If it were easy, you would have already written the book, right? We are here for your support. We're here for guidance. We're here as a sounding board. We are here to be on the journey with you, to be with you through those tough spots. So if you're looking for that in your life, then I encourage you to check out what we're doing this weekend. We are enrolling new writers into our programs, nonfiction, paperravenbooks.com/ready to write, and fiction, paperravenbooks.com/novel blueprint. And I am so excited to share with you guys Connie, and I'll introduce Connie just very briefly before she comes on so that I get to control how we talk about. So Connie amazes me because I'd never actually met Connie until she came to one of our workshops, and she signed up and she was ready to go. And she just like wrote through her book. Like she'd done the research, she'd done the writing. She's like, I know kind of how to write. I teach writing. I can handle the writing part. But what blew me away was I remember giving her some feedback. I'm sure she'll have comments about this. I remember giving her some feedback. And in the process of some back and forth and Connie doing a lot of deep reflective work, she changed the direction of her book. It was a massive, courageous, amazing change, and it has actually affected sort of the trajectory of her life even. And I find that so inspiring that you could, through the process of the writing, realize there's a different direction that you're meant to go and just take it and just do it and just run with it. And that's exactly what Connie shows me really kind of every day that she pops up on my newsfeed. So Connie, I'm going to bring you on with us. Hey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay, because I'm outside and so there's no internet connection inside this building where I am. My daughter's doing gym and it's a metal building, so I have to be outside. So just let me know if at any point it's really hard to like hear me.
You're good.
I don't know what the outside noise will be.
No.
How are you?
Perfect. I'm good. I'm so excited that you are talking with us today. Thank you for making time amidst kids and the holiday season and all the things going on.
Yeah. I'm just fitting you into waiting for her to finish with gym. That's why I chose this time.
Yep. Let me know. I think if we have 20 minutes, I think that'd be perfect.
Yeah. So. She'll be in there for an hour. So.
Okay, cool. So I would love for you to kind of like tell us a little bit about like your backstory and like when you knew that you were writing a book. I think it was a different book than you ended up writing, but do you remember that back to that time when you were like, okay, I think I have a book in me?
Yeah. So as a English teacher, writing teacher, I guess a lot of us want to write a book if that's the trajectory of your life, is to be in that world. So I don't know that I did not want to write a book before I wrote this one. I kind of knew when I retired from teaching at a university that I wanted to write a business book because I taught business communication at the university for a long time. And I knew that there was a need for that. I saw my students go through this class and then, you don't really remember a lot of that. You get out of school, you start working and you're like, I think I took a class that taught me this and I don't really remember. So it's a very practical idea. Like had this personal, these 4 core personal things that I thought were the foundation of business communication. After teaching it for so long, these were really important to me. I thought if you could get these things right, this was great business communication. And so I was going to write that book. And that book had been kind of stewing and I had been putting some minimal ideas down and I had some ideas and those kinds of things were happening. And I was doing all of this other stuff, right? So I was digging into my faith and I had always read psychology and communication go kind of hand in hand. Yeah. So I was reading all these other things and I started to write the book, kind of felt, I don't know what I'm doing, although I know how to write. I really don't know how to make this come to life in terms of a book. And so that's when I hooked up with your course, started kind of going through it, got into the author groups and started listening to people. And I started writing the book, but then it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be writing. And I think that's what you were referring to.
Yep.
It kind of started having a lot of things in it that I didn't really think I was going to put in there. And so when I went back, so I did all the brain dumping, right? I did all the get everything out that you think about this topic. And when I read back over it, I was like, whoa, that's really not the book I thought I was going to write. But I was intrigued by it because I thought this is a really powerful book and it's probably better than just another business book on here's how to write good business communication, right?
Yeah.
And it had this faith-based angle and it had the psychology angle, which were all important to me. And so I started kind of, with guidance from you and the author group, really making that into a book. But that was not what I anticipated from the beginning. So having to kind of being forced to sit down and write, and don't stop yourself, just write. Don't try to create the book as you go. Okay, that's what I was doing. And maybe a lot of authors do that. You probably could speak to that. I was trying to write the book as I went, because you read a lot of books and you see there's an organization. So I was trying to write it organized like that. And so it didn't really work that well. I guess that's why I got stuck. I got stuck because, nothing comes out like that. So yeah, the whole process of forcing myself to just brain dump everything that mattered to me really took the book in a new direction. So I don't know if my story is different than some people. Maybe some people go in with this very clear vision of this is what I want this book to be. And it ends up being much like that. But that was not my experience. So I don't know if that answers your
It does.
question, but...
It does. And I mean, you created enough structure and organization that you started writing, and then you sort of realized, oh wait, I think I'm writing a different book. Did you go back and kind of like reorganize, or do you remember what that process was like for you?
Well, so originally the book was based on these 4 foundational principles of great communication. So, what I call focus, or audience awareness, and audience, entrenching yourself in the audience, and then connecting with people, empowering people through positive communication, and then valuing people by being concise and clear and knowing what your purpose is and what they need. And so those are the core foundational business communication principles that I teach, but they work really for any communication. And that's kind of what I knew. And so originally that was going to kind of be the basis of the book. And that ended up being the end of the book, like an implementation section of the book. And the book became much more about how do we honor, how do we build relationships, how do we actually show up in our day-to-day lives, what should that look like? And so there's this whole front section of the book that I didn't really anticipate. So it did take, some reorganization, some rethinking, like, okay, well, I really want this in here, but there's going to need to be something before this, right? And so I really had to start thinking intentionally at that point about, can you hear the birds just calling? They want to be part of the live feed right now.
They're in the background. They're not too bad. Yeah,
they're so loud to me. So I had to start being intentional at that point, right? And I had been reading a lot of things. And so it really pieces started to come together, and I started to have to say, okay, well, I need to read something on this, and I need to read something on this, because I want to build this section of the book out. And so, yes, I had to start reorganizing my thoughts, and I had to start being intentional at that point, right? There's a point at which you have to start being really intentional.
Yeah.
And saying, if this is going to be a book, and I wasn't striving for some huge book, right? I teach business communication. It's all about conciseness and clarity. And so I wasn't trying to find extra stuff to fill a book. I just felt like I couldn't go from A to B without A1 in the middle, right? That's where I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to need to really start to figure out how do these pieces connect and what fits together, and then what gets left out. Because when you look at that brain dump, sometimes you're like, that's interesting, but it doesn't belong in this book anymore. Yeah. And I think that's hard. Having been a writing teacher, I know, because I would tell students all the time, get rid of that. It doesn't belong in here. And they'd be like, that's like 300 words. I can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
My paper will be too short. And so it's the same with your book, right? You're like, but that's a whole 15,000 words. If I get rid of that, my book is back to like nothing. But, there was a lot of stuff that just didn't belong in that particular book. Maybe in another book, maybe never. I don't know. Maybe it's still sitting in my Evernote.
So when you sort of like shifted directions, you embraced kind of this more faith-based Christian angle.
Yeah.
And so then you were more sort of straightforwardly talking to people using like spiritual terms, talking about God,
Right.
and like
Yeah.
and sort of unapologetically. That was sort of the
Right.
angle of the book. How do you feel like that has changed who you're marketing toward? I mean, now you're not just talking to business people who want to put out like board notes or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who are you talking to now?
Okay, so yeah, it has been quite a 6 months. I think it's been about 6 months. So June, my book came out in June. So a year from the writing, and still when I launched the book, so I was very much thinking my business, so the back end, right? And I don't know if you talked about this on this live yet, but that idea where you write a book, but then there's the back end, right? There's work that you do after, because of the book, or people find you with the book and then they're interested in other things. And so that back end of my book was still going to be very much business focus. And the spiritual part for me, the faith part for me doesn't go away, but I wasn't hinging a lot on that. And then the more I got feedback from the book and the more people read the book, the most profound feedback. So the people who were most excited and felt they needed to reach out to me, right? Because most readers read it, and if you happen to pass them in the store, they're like, "Oh, I read your book, it was great." And but the people who would email me or call me or reach out to me were profoundly affected by the faith connected to the business. And I thought, okay, so that must be something they're not used to getting.
Yeah.
They're not used to getting a business book that says, hey, this is about your faith. And what are you doing with your faith? And so that's the part I really wanted to do, but I think I was scared it wouldn't fit. And the book actually solidified for me, no, you can niche this down and not be afraid that you'll never have business, because that's a fear, right? Especially for nonfiction writers. You do this business and you think, oh gosh, if I niche down too far, I'm going to narrow my clients to like one person.
Yep.
And you start to backpedal and you're like, no, I want to be at least, somebody for most people. I can't be somebody for everybody, but I could be somebody for most people. And what I'm finding is that's not really where my heart is. Yeah. And so, yes, I'm maybe going to not do business in the future with a lot of people who I could have done business with. But I've really started, so you're talking about my posts, like you're kind of seeing it, right? I'm rebranding kind of. I'm shifting a lot of my stuff to really focus on Christian business women who feel like I'm a Christian woman in the workforce of some sort, whether that's because she volunteers for some organizations, or because she actually goes out and works out of the home, or maybe she works from home as an entrepreneur. And she's really struggling with this whole faith and reality, and how do you show up in a business environment that is sometimes cruel and harsh and competitive and not so nice? How do you show up in that every day with your Christian values intact and you feel like you leave aligned, right? Like you're still in alignment. So that's kind of my niche. It's where I'm starting to focus kind of my full attention, rebranding things. It's where, so hopefully in the near future, it's where you'll see me starting to use the ask method, which I learned over a year ago, but never really I think I couldn't figure out what to do with it because I hadn't really figured out who I wanted to specifically talk to yet, right?
Yep.
Because like the ask method too, I mean, it's great and you can do great things with it. But if you're trying to talk to everybody, nobody responds.
Yeah.
People are like, I don't know if that's for me or not. So I'm starting to see how kind of that could be used, because if I'm talking to this specific group, then it will resonate with them and they'll be more likely to want to click on that and share their experiences, or, whatever, engage with me to figure out what my experiences are versus theirs. So yes, the book definitely changed the trajectory of what I thought my kind of business would be for me. So I guess it can do a multitude of things, potentially.
Yeah. What can you give us the title of the book so people can find it?
Yeah. So it's called The Impact Directive: How to Use Your Communication to Positively Impact Yourself and Others, and Why It Matters That You Do.
Yeah.
So the Impact Directive will get you to it if you don't remember that whole long subtitle. It's on Amazon. And I mean, like most authors, new authors, there haven't been a ton of book sales. It's not running off the shelves, but I do know that the people who've read it, like I said, the people who read it and it touched them, that's a powerful indicator to me that you don't quit going because you're not selling a lot of books. You don't quit talking about it because you're not selling, a few hundred books a month or a few hundred books a week. Or I'm doing this book launch for someone he's kind of he's a well-known author. He's well-known for his first book. He's in the Christian community. And I'm on his launch team, right? Like I had people do for me, but there are like 500 of us on his launch team. I had like 30 people,
Right.
some of whom were engaged. He has 500. So I'm well aware that I'm not doing great things with the book, but that's not really deterring me because the book was such a catalyst for making decisions and really solidifying and honing in. And the book doesn't go away, right?
Yeah.
And that's, you or somebody, maybe one of the other authors said, it's not like the book is like suddenly no good after a year.
Right.
It's there forever. And if the principles work and or you could revise and edit it, I guess. And, if your principles change or knowledge grows and changes in your industry, you could do a revision in a couple of years and put out a new book with new information included. So it's not wasted. None of the effort and time is wasted doing the book. But for me personally, and I can't speak for any other author, the book has really been a driving force in how I plan to move forward with my business. Right. So even if I never wrote another book, which I intend to write another book, I just don't know what that book's going to be because I have a few ideas in mind. So maybe Monday on your writers,
all right, yeah,
our intensive writers day, I will jump into trying to write that second book or at least figure out what it might be about. So it's not that I'll never write another book, but even if I never wrote another book, right? Even if I said, okay, I wrote a book, check off the list, that book would be valuable for years.
Yes.
Maybe even longer than years, maybe decades of time. It could be valuable to me. And I can tell you, look, so I don't know if you've talked about this, but somebody the other day was asking me about self-publishing. I was in a little group thing and we were listening to a traditional publishing lady talk about traditional publishing. And, oops, my finger was over the camera. Sorry. Traditional publishing. And somebody asked me about self-publishing. And I said, well, to be honest, not a single person who has commented on my book has asked me, well, did you self-publish that? They don't look at that copyright page. Most people don't read it. They don't go looking to see, oh, I wonder which publisher published Connie's book. Now, I have had people interested in writing books. So several people have said, hey, I want to write a book. How did you do it?
Yep.
But they're the ones who see themselves as a writer, not the people who are just picking up my book to read it. Those people don't have any clue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they do, they obviously didn't care.
Right.
They read it anyway.
What I love about how you just embraced the change in audience is that like you really actually saved yourself years of heartache, basically.
Yeah.
Because you could have said, well, I'll write the book later, but for now I'm just going to continue working. I'm going to leave, retire as a teacher. I'm going to continue working with business leaders and I'm just going to teach my 4 principles that I know really well. And I'm just going to be a consultant for them like I've always done. But in the process of writing the book, when you realize, oh shoot, I have a much deeper, more impactful message for this other group of people, I'm going to lean into that. What you've done now is you've started to plant the seeds. You've created a new trajectory for your life in what you wouldn't have done before. So before you might have spent 3, 4, 5, 6 years working with business owners before you realized, oh shoot, I need to pivot. What you've done now is just create that shortcut. You just went, okay, pivot. Here we go. Right. Like that was painful to do that while I was writing a book, but now I get to start with the planting of the seeds and you're building out a new community from scratch. I mean, that is not easy, but it is from scratch.
Yeah, totally. There's nobody in my group that came in, and I don't have many people, but it's like maybe 90 people in my Facebook group, maybe 40 people on my email list. I mean, that's not big. It's just not, something that I've developed great skills yet at in doing, but none of those people came into my group with this niche in mind.
Yeah.
So I'm really starting from ground zero with this whole rebranding and pivot, but I'm not concerned about it because it's such a passion. So like maybe one of the, I'll just kind of share this because maybe one of the pluses that I have in my favor making this decision, right, is I own my own consulting business, training business, but I do trainings freelance for an international training company who works with really big clients. So I don't want to work with really big clients, but they find them and then they hire me to go do trainings. So I do all of these communication trainings. It's really nice. It's like they do all the work and I just show up and I do whatever training they sold, right? And it's all communication related. So it's all things that are in my wheelhouse. But what I'm seeing, Morgan, is that I can go in those rooms. This has really been, I just wrote about this. I don't know if I put it in a post or maybe I just put it in a post yesterday. But anyway, I go into these trainings and I do these communication trainings and it's totally stuff I know how to do. And everybody's like, oh, it's great. You're natural. But I get the most comments on the things that I know during the training that I don't talk about Christ because that's not what this company is about. But the parts of the training where I'm digging into what I personally believe, when I start to really talk to them about where communication comes from, and that's all stuff that I'm allowed to bring in. I'm not like hijacking their training, but I'll make comments. Those are the things that people come and say, when you were talking about this, it really resonated with me. So it's almost like I'm getting this affirmation that kind of stuff, that deep heart stuff where you're digging into like, how are we as humans? And sometimes we stink. Like I will admit, sometimes I really stink at this whole thing and I say things I shouldn't say and my tone is ugly and I make a face that I shouldn't be making or like I catch myself, right? I'm better than I used to be because I've done all this work, but I know from the trainings I'm doing with this company that I totally could do what I envisioned at the beginning, right? All of these communication trainings on all of these communication topics, but it wasn't where my passion was going to be. And I would have burned out very quickly if, like you said, if I had spent 6 or 7 years building that communication business, doing those very generic business trainings, I would have done just what you said. I would have turned around in 6 years and gone, okay, but I'm not super passionate about this. Yep. And how do I pivot? And then I would have been pivoting 6 years in, realizing, okay, if I'm going to do this long term, I've got to have a lot more passion when I show up in the room. And that's kind of what I found in the book, right? Yeah. So writing the book and the book kind of taking a new direction showed me exactly what I'm truly passionate about. Because when I did all the free writing, what was coming out? All that stuff I was holding back because I thought it didn't fit in a business book. This doesn't fit in a business book. And so when I free wrote it and it all came out, I was like, oh, but that's really what I want to talk about. So, and I allowed the book to go in that direction. I mean, that was a big leap of faith because I could have said no. But it's been really a game changer for what I maybe would have done with my business. Do I know that my business will grow more slowly? Faith-based things tend to be a lot slower to grow because, the money. So you're going to church organizations, you're going to women's ministries, there's not a whole lot of money right there for people to throw at you. But I think it's okay. And I realize that because it's where my passion is. Yeah. So it's been I didn't think of it like you're thinking of it, but I definitely could have spent 6 to 7 years growing a business that I was then not passionate about. Good at, sure. Like it's in my wheelhouse, but not passionate maybe about it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the crazy thing about a pivot. And I mean, to be really honest, like when I put out my first book, I had less than 100 people on an email list. And the first few months of trying to get the book out felt really slow and really painful. And I was doing webinars where like no one showed up, Yeah. And like it was hard, but that was me pivoting from a general writing coach and editor to like, no, we are doing this kind of book. We're working with this kind of writer, and this is my new audience. And I felt very similar. It's like, oh, this was a really hard right turn. Yeah. And the beginning feels really slow, but how cool. And now I can say, sort of looking back, I'm like, oh, that was a great decision.
Yeah. Well, I hope I can say that in a few years, like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the grit and the perseverance, right? I mean, it's like the book is the beginning of the conversation, and it's the point that, like you said, it's the catalyst. It begins a new growth trajectory, and having patience with that is incredibly important. But you're right, the book doesn't go away. You can keep remarketing it, you can keep promoting it, you can keep talking about it. It will always be there as an asset for you as you're growing your business, and you don't have to rewrite it anytime soon.
I mean, that's a few years out for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were, this is kind of my last question for you. So if you were looking back, and you won't be surprised this time because I've asked this to you before.
Okay. So I know my answer.
It's like if you're looking back to Connie a few years ago before you started writing the book, and you wanted to like give her a lesson learned, like something that you wish you had known back then, what would you say to that younger version of yourself about writing a book?
Okay, so you do know the answer to this because I've said this before, and I've actually shared that. I thought it was a profound question the first time you asked it to me, and I've shared it with other people, and I've shared it with your audience too. But with this new audience, I would say, so before I wrote the book, I thought I knew a lot about myself. I thought I knew a lot about how I handled situations. I thought I knew a lot about my faith and where that was. I thought I knew a lot, right? I just, most of us do. We think we know a lot about ourselves. And I'll say it just like I said it before, because I think the first time something comes out sometimes is the most powerful way that you can say it. But I did not know how much of myself was waiting for me on the other side of that book. And that is the best way to describe it, because I found things about myself through writing that book, redoing that book. There was one point where you looked at my developmental piece and you said, okay, fine, but you're not in it. And I had to go back and put my story in it and talk about losing my mom and talk about, how ugly I was to people and how I hated that part of me. And that was hard, but I was waiting on the other side of writing that to come out of that a better person, right? So it's amazing, just the transformation in myself. And I tell people, kind of honestly, when I was in the throes of writing that and realizing what was happening, I know they tell you, like, think about your audience, right? When you're writing, I was not. I was thinking all about myself.
Yeah.
Like, what is in this for me? And so as I wrote for myself, that's when all of the really, things that would resonate with an audience came out. And so, yeah, I mean, I was waiting. I was just kind of waiting for, hey, somebody's walking into the building, so I'm going to wave to him so it doesn't look really strange that I'm talking to my phone outside the building. So yeah, I was like waiting for myself, right? I had all of these things I needed to know about myself that I found out because I wrote the book.
Yeah.
So it was powerful for me. I don't know that every author goes through that. I mean, I guess most of them would tell you it is a kind of a changing experience, especially your first book. But I can definitely say I gained as much from my book, the content of my book, as, some of the readers have told me that they've gained from it. Certainly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a truly transformational process. And that's why I continue to encourage people to write their own books, not to sign up for a transcription service where you get interviewed for 12 hours and they write it for you. But like the process of like putting the words on paper is so powerful. And I think always transformational for the author. And yeah, I just love how you really leaned into it and you were like, okay, this is happening. This is really uncomfortable. I don't really want to do this, but okay, here we go. And you just you leaned right into it. And you got the transformation. And because you were able to share that in words, put it on the page, publish it, now people are coming back to you and saying, wow, that was powerful. So
yeah. And things that I think people in my life probably read and went, I don't know if that's true, because you play a good game. I mean, I played a good game on the outside, right, to people. And what I really wanted to show people was that that's not what was going on inside of me. Like maybe you never saw that part of me, but I was eating myself up. And so the book is a lot about, how to positively impact yourself and others, right? It's also about self-communication. It's about, how do we do communication in a way that positively impacts us and positively impacts other people. And so that part was really, really where I had to make some self-admissions, right? It was nothing I didn't know about myself. It just always, I mean, they do that in therapy. I mean, if you go to cognitive behavioral therapy, they make you write all the time because that's how you see what you think, is to write it on paper and go, oh my gosh, do I really think that about myself?
Yeah.
Obviously I do. I wrote it like this. And so then to look at that from the perspective of this is who I was, but look at what I could be, was truly transformational.
Yeah. And
I
love that way that you phrase it, is I was waiting for myself on the other side.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's powerful.
That sounds kind of corny, but it's true.
No, it's true. It really is true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Connie. Thanks for sharing this time with us. Thank you for going outside the building to find some Wi-Fi for us.
It's pretty pleasant out here. The weather's pretty good. It's cool, but not hot, so we're good.
Oh, that's awesome. This is the time of year to be in the South, right?
Yes, right now. It's cool, but you can stand outside and not freeze. Yeah. This is
Well,
it.
thank you so much,
All right.
Connie. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, bye.
Bye. Alrighty, guys. I'm about to go make a school run to pick up my kiddos from school. We're going to come back. We've got another guest in about 30 minutes, so I'm going to be there and back. But I just want to let you guys know, if you have been on the fence and you're like, I am planning to write a book, I don't exactly know when, where, or how, but I know it needs to happen. This is how, right here, right now. Like, this is how. If you're writing a nonfiction book, it's paperravenbooks.com/ready to write. If you're writing a fiction book, it's paperravenbooks.com/novel blueprint. We have methodologies and strategies and tools that have worked for hundreds of other writers, and we are here to support you and guide you in getting your book done. So if you're planning to write your book and you don't know exactly how it's supposed to come together, what it's supposed to look like, how am I getting feedback on this thing? How do I know whether I'm doing it right? This is the container for you. Our courses, our community, our support, our workshops where we're doing this together. All the authors that we've had on today, we are in it together. Everyone knows each other. Everyone recognizes each other from our Facebook groups, from our Zoom calls, from our conversations. This is a true community. We are devoted and dedicated to, yes, the quality of your first book, but also your career as an author, the business that you're building. We really have truly in mind your success as a published author. So go check out those details. We are open for new writers this weekend. We are closing the doors Sunday night. So if you want the special pricing that's this weekend, the free bonuses that are this weekend around writing, around publishing, around book marketing, especially in this new digital online era, how are we getting our books directly into the hands of our readers? And you want our support, our community, all of that is open and ready for you this weekend. Okay, so go check out those links. I will post them in the comments below here. I'm going to go pick up my kiddos from school, and then I will be right back. And we have another author who is in the process. She has just experienced her own major breakthrough, and I want to share her like in the messy middle process with you guys in just a little bit. All right, I'll see you on the other side.